Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:06. It's O'Connor and Company. Thank you so much for being part of our Friday show here as we unpack a very busy day in news yesterday and today. Always looking forward as much as we can. In fact, let's look forward to 8:35 when we'll speak with the one and only Roseanne. She's got a show coming up in D.C. and boy, she picked a good news day to join us.
Oh, what a great time. Yeah.
It's Larry O'Connor here and Patrice Onwuka there. Good morning, Patrice.
Happy Friday, everybody. We made it.
We did. And something tells me that we will see developments in this epic showdown now between Elon Musk and Donald Trump that we've been talking all day about. Joining us right now to give us some historical context, Tevi Troy, presidential historian, author of the book The Power and the Money, The Epic Clashes Between Commanders-in-Chief and Titans of Industry. What a prophet you are to write this book, sir. Well done.
Yeah, thanks. I really picked this one right, huh?
Well, I've been doing some research throughout the program about this, and let's talk about some historical context. Woodrow Wilson was Henry Ford, was a big critic of Woodrow Wilson's policies with regard to moving us into World War I. Henry Ford, at the time, a renowned pacifist, they had public spats, but Henry Ford then ended up sort of helping Woodrow Wilson in the war effort out by converting his factories, right?
Henry Ford was helpful to Wilson. Also, they were sort of political collaborators. But the important thing is that when they met in the White House to discuss this, Wilson had him kicked out of the White House, escorted off the White House grounds. And Henry Ford's response is, he is a small man.
He's not wrong about that. I still want to change the name of that bridge here in D.C. But I guess what I'm pointing out here is as ugly as it got, and back then we didn't have social media or any electronic media really other than radio, they still worked out. They reconciled in some way, ultimately, because it was in the best interest of themselves, but also of the country.
Oh, absolutely. And that is the persistent theme that I found in writing The Power and the Money, that these guys have a concert of interests, that they both need things from each other, that both CEOs and presidents can benefit from one another, and that while they may have spats, because these are people with huge egos, they also ultimately need to get along.
Well, Tevi, beyond just the mutual interest they have or the interests that align, did you find that there was a deep personal appreciation, maybe a connection that was more about their personalities, meeting somebody that you just get, that maybe helps us understand how these CEOs and presidents really got along so well and overcame their differences when they kind of broke up and got back together?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's a concept I talk about in The Power of the Money. It's called the loneliness of leadership. If you're the president or the CEO, you're the top person in your organization. Everyone is subordinate to you. You don't necessarily trust everybody because everybody needs something from you. But these people across other organizations who are leader of their organizations, who became masters of the universe in other areas and other spheres, those are people you can relate to. Those are people who have climbed to the top of the pyramid like you. They understand the loneliness. And I saw a lot of great conversations like that, such as between Lew Wasserman, the Hollywood mogul, and Lyndon B. Johnson. They would stay up until late in the night in Johnson's White House bedroom talking because they had such a connection from that loneliness of leadership.
Let's talk about Teddy Roosevelt and J.P. Morgan. Roosevelt, I guess you could call him a populist of the era. He ran against the big trusts, right? The monopolies, the big walls. I mean, J.P. Morgan personified that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And Roosevelt had all these plans for reining them in, for curtailing the trusts. And Morgan sent his people to Washington and said, can't we work this out privately? And Roosevelt said, that is exactly what we do not want to do. But then the U.S. economy has a real trouble in 1907, and Morgan has a plan for rescuing the economy. And he runs by Roosevelt, who reluctantly agrees because it was necessary. So he went along with it. But that didn't mean they really liked each other, because later on, when Roosevelt goes to visit Africa after being president, Morgan hears that he's going to be on safari, and he says, well, I hope the lions will do their duty.
Oof.
Oh, wow.
All right, that's pretty ugly.
Well, moving forward, just a little bit to Barack Obama and Jamie Dimon. I don't know. These two seem to be an outlier compared to some of the other relationships here. But you seem to suggest that they really are just like these others, and that they were both. I guess they had interests that aligned. Is there anything deeper than just the interest?
Well, I think CEOs were just kissing up to Obama constantly at the time, and Dimon was one of the rare ones who was willing to criticize Obama. He thought Obama's rhetoric on the fat cats went too far. And so he called Obama out, and then some of the White House political people, including people like Rahm Emanuel, said, "You don't even understand how unpopular you are." So they were very critical of Dimon behind the scenes. But ultimately, Dimon goes to visit the Obama White House something like 2 dozen times. So he stayed in because, again, there was a mutuality of interest.
So, all right, this is interesting that the common theme in your book, and again, the book is called The Power and the Money, might be a good weekend read, everybody, considering what's going on in the news. The epic clashes between commanders-in-chief and titans of industry. Given all of that, obviously, Mr. Troy, you know that the world looks to you to solve this current problem. Based on your understanding of history, what do you think could be the common goal here, the thing that brings these together? I think it's the mission to Mars. I think that's something that, Musk is passionate about to his core, to his DNA. He's defined himself over that. And I think Trump would love the idea of being sort of you can't talk about going to the moon without bringing up John F. Kennedy. This could be a huge legacy that Trump initiated the process for humanity to explore a new planet. What do you think of that idea?
Yeah, I think that's totally right, but it gets to a larger point, which is that Musk is very good at what he does. He engineered the electric car really well. He engineers these missions to space. He's doing a good job with Tesla X in terms of making it a more, I guess, bipartisan platform. He's got all these different business interests, and he's good at what he does. And so it's not like the government can just say, we're going to drop all our contracts. They can't just drop their Starlink contracts. They need it.
That's not it.
Yeah.
And so eventually they're going to have to find ways to work together, even if in the short term they're going to cause each other some pain.
We kind of touched on it earlier in the show. Sometimes there's a third party, maybe a former best friend or close insider who's now on the outside of the relationships between like the president and the CEO. In our context today, we talked about Steve Bannon, and maybe there's some jealousy there. In some of the other presidential examples, were there other kind of third parties, people who were maybe insiders who are still part of the inner circle but didn't like that close relationship that they had and worked to undermine it?
Yeah, I think in almost all of these circumstances, there were people who were trying to undermine it. So, for example, Ross Perot was very close in the Nixon administration. It was giving Nixon advice and promising money and highlighted the issue of POWs. But a lot of the Nixon White House aides did not like Perot, and they were undercutting him and talking about how annoying he was, what a pain he was. So, yeah, I think this often happens. And, I think we see this with Steve Bannon, who's, I think, the Iago of this relationship with Trump and Musk, who's really just driving them apart.
Yeah, I don't think Steve Bannon is necessarily building any bridges. And maybe J.D. Vance, maybe. Sort of space, or maybe someone like Charlie Kirk, who actually seems to have both of these people's ears. There needs to be somebody to build this bridge. The way it looks to me, Tevi, and you're the expert, I'll let you have the final word. Musk needs Trump. Trump doesn't necessarily need Musk, but he needs him to not be his enemy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so Musk said something very interesting, which is, enjoy being president in the next 3.5 years. I have the next 40 years. And what I found in The Power of the Money is that in these relationships, the president has more power in the short term. There's no doubt about that. Any one clash, bet on the president. But over the long term, the CEOs can outlast them. They're not limited by 2-term tenures or even they can just stay for much longer periods. And so that's why a president needs to think about the long term, even while the CEO is worrying about protecting himself in the short term.
Yeah, I'll tell you, J.D. Vance he needs to play this. It's going to be really interesting to see how he plays this because J.D. wants to run in 28, and it would be nice to have Musk on his side. But at the same time, he doesn't want to be on the outs with the president right now. Let's keep an eye on that. We'll look for the Theo Vaughn podcast dropping soon. We'll leave it there. Thank you. Great stuff. And I'll be getting your book, The Power and the Money, The Epic Clashes Between Commanders-in-Chief and Titans of Industry by Tevi Troy, playing out before our very eyes. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.